Welcome back. And if you could see outside, then you would know that Mr. Winter is also back. It's white and cold outside. So tonight I'm playing in my little workshop, as it is just too cold in the old barn. So you guys are in for a treat. You get to listen again to the harmonic noises of the old vintage Allen Bradley frequency controller. But I'm not an inhumane person. I will edit down the sound volume a bit. Earlier I was trying to bring back some order in the natural chaotic state of my workshop, and then I found these old projects. These are early Rolingmetal failures. They are attempts at making a center drill holder, but I never could get the hole to fit right, so it would when pulling out. But I've come up with a cunning plan for these. I'm going to make a spring-loaded center to line up and push in tabs. There are 3 here, so there is some room for screw-ups. Damn it. This spring I found is rather stiff and probably lost forever. Found it! So this spring is rather stiff, and I think that's probably a good thing. I need to use the tailstock anyway to keep up the spring tension. I've chosen the longest taper as it will be able to reach over the cross slide, and that should give me some extra room to turn my tapping wrench. This hole is just a little bigger than 8mm. Well, let's drill it out as far as I can with this 8mm drill, and then enlarge it to the size of the spring. I have no idea what I'm doing here. There are no plans for this. I'm just winging it. Here comes the noise. Man, that tailstock was stuck on the drill. Well, that's as deep as I can go. Should have left it turning. So that's about 9 centimeters there-ish. I think I'll see if I can move the drill bit a bit and make the hole a little deeper. Looks like the shank of my precious Banggood cobalt drill bit got a little damaged. That probably happened when the workpiece seemed to be stuck. Ah, that's a shame. This spring is 10mm thick, and guess what? So is this drill bit. Maybe a little bit slower. It's a bit noisy. And I'm not talking about the Allen Bradley. It's getting a bit much. Feels like I've reached the end of the 8mm hole. I didn't drill it any deeper. Well, let's leave it like this for now. I can always drill a little deeper. I think that's a bit more than 10 centimeters. I changed my mind. I can go a little deeper. So that's almost 11.5 centimeters. If the spring sits deeper, I can make the rod or the center point longer, and that should help with the fit of the center point rod, whatever you want to call it. The finish of the bore is a bit rough. Well, very rough. I'm never going to get it all the way down to the bottom. Lucky for me, I have a 11mm reamer, although it is one of questionable quality, but in this case I don't care. Lovely noise, don't you think? I'm not using the quill at the moment. I'm just sliding the tailstock forward. Here comes the problem area. That shank might be bigger than the reamer, but I do need to get deeper. It's going on. I'm locking the tailstock back. Maybe a bit of loop won't hurt. Let's see if that helped. I have not cleaned out the chips. Not much better. I think if you push it in this way, it will expand and lock itself. Turning it helps a little, but that's not how I'm going to get it to the bottom. These stupid things you run into. It's freaking unbelievable. Looks like I need a new piece of emery cloth. This will take a while. New day, new plan. I got to be flexible because this sure isn't. I'm gonna drill out the hole to 11.5 millimeter to about 2.5 centimeter from the bottom, and then I will ream it to 12 centimeters. About half of the spring will then sit in the 11 millimeter portion of the hole, and I will have to come up with a piece of 12 millimeter scraptonium for the center. Here we go. I should put some oil in the bearings. That stuff is pretty thick with the cold weather. It's so cold here today that the LCD panel or the touchscreen of the camera is acting up. Very annoying to set the focus point. That's deep enough. Let's install the reamer. Here we go. I'm going to clear out the chips before I do the second half. And then we shoot a little loop into the hole. Lock the fill stock. Some extra loop won't hurt. Looks like I didn't drill far enough with the 11.5mm drill. Yeah, that's okay. This should work. Well, that's all I'm going to do today, because my feet are getting cold, and then it's time to stop. I'll continue this tomorrow evening. .23. Those cheap Banggood Dreamers sure are no precision tools. Well, as long as there is no taper in there, I think I'll be fine. I have to open up the bottom of the hole a bit so the spring will slide in a little easier. Next day, next problem. I cannot get the spring to fit inside the 11mm hole at the bottom. And when I look inside the hole, I can see the ridge between the reamed 12mm hole and the 11mm hole, and it's clearly offset to the side, and this means the spring will also be to the side, and that wasn't the plan. Most likely the 11.5mm drill bit drifted to one side, but it is also possible that the internal Morse taper 2 is at a slight angle. So when I reinserted the workpiece at a different position, and the 11.5mm hole got drilled at a different angle. It's also possible that it is a combination of both. Anyway, I don't like it. I will do a bit more grinding with a fresh piece of 80 grit emery cloth. Hopefully I can get the spring to seat at the bottom, but I might get bored and just drill the bottom of the hole 11.5mm. But that's probably not a good idea, as the drill might start robbing the side of the 12mm reamed part of the hole. This sure isn't going to be the precise tool that I had in mind. But there's no way back, and I don't want to start over just yet, so I better finish this. It might still be usable. Well, I'm going with the 11.5mm drill, because grinding the hole to size is just taking me too long. This either works, or it's a good reason to start over. I'm not getting deep enough, so I gotta move the drill bit a bit. I hit the bottom. The spring is sitting on the bottom of the hole now, and I found a piece of 12mm rod. But as you can see, there's quite a bit of play, more than I like. It's also easier than I thought it would be to push this all the way in. This is as far as it will go. Then it hits the beginning of the 11.5mm hole. It also doesn't when pulling out, so I guess I'll have to make something to fit. I found something. It's a piece of 16mm round stock that used to be part of another project. I'll grind off this weld and then center drill both sides and try to turn this down to 12mm between centers. So, a new pointy bit for turning between centers. Not much happening here. That weld is pretty hard. It looks like this bar got a little bent by the welding because it's rubbing here. You know what? I don't need a piece this long anyway, so I'll just start at the live center. Looks like I'm cutting a nice taper. I will try and line up the top slide a little better. Lots of horrible chatter, but the weld is gone, and so is the bend that was in the material. Between here and here there's about 2/10 of a millimeter taper. So I will try to adjust the top slide a little bit more and take another cut. It looks like there's only a few hundredths of a millimeter between here and there, but it's very hard to measure because the surface finish well, looks better than it actually is. So I'm switching to a high-speed tool bit. Let's see if that helps. Well, that tool definitely isn't cutting right. Back to the grinder. I gave it my best, reground the tool bit at least 3 times, but the surface finish I'm getting is just beyond horrible. So I'm switching back to carbide. I touched up the pointy bit with a diamond hone, and the surface finish is very acceptable now. Let's see. 12, 16, 15, 14, and on this side 12, 22, 19, 12, 18, about 4/100 of a millimeter taper. I'll quickly knock off the high spots and then I'll do a test fit. Could use a bit more polishing, but let's test fit first. Well, that's not fitting. It needs a bit more polishing. Maybe the inside here as well. It won't go any further, but it's getting there. And it already makes that popping noise. Well, I've done it again. I got things stuck. This is all very familiar to that failed cross-drilling jig. I've already heated it up, but I cannot get it to move. And I'm afraid I will have to hammer it out, and that will be the end of this workpiece, because I'm sure it will completely fuck up the inside bore. Why? Why? Well, nasty word. Drastic times, drastic measures. After doing some editing on this video, I've decided to stop here. Even though I've thrown out a lot of footage, this video is getting way too long, so I've decided to make it a two-part special. The first part, the failure, the second part will be the glorious success. Although I still need to record the second part. But I should be able to get that done in the next couple of days. And whatever happens, trust me, I will have a spring-loaded center before the year is over.